Okay, so we're going to go to the next slide. It's basically the general definitions and terminologies used in basketball. Some of the things we probably touched on in the previous slide as well. So you will realize in some of the slides there are things that just repeats itself again. Okay. Anyways, okay, so first of all, when you look at teams, I'm sure all of you've either played basketball or you've seen it being played maybe on TV or even on movies, those American movies. Okay, so I think in the first lesson we did say the different formats of the game. We spoke about the different formats, which is the 3 versus 3, which is the latest form of basketball, where they only use the half of the court with one hoop, and then we obviously have a full team, which is a 5 versus 5 or five-a-side basketball. Okay, so teams consist not more than 12 players, and then obviously the coach, and then sometimes there's the assistant coach, and obviously a team manager, as it is within other sports as well. So at any point during playing time, there are only 5 players on the court. Okay, so when you play 5 versus 5 basketball, you need at least a minimum of 3 players to be able to start a basketball match. Then the rest of the team are substitutes. The coach is responsible for submitting the names of the players to the scorer before the game starts and also for requesting timeouts during the game. The coach can talk to his players during the game as long as he does not enter the court. Okay, so like within any other types of sports, you will always see the coach, especially in soccer. You'll always see the coach on the sideline shouting throughout the match. Okay, so that is also allowed in basketball. However, the coach is not allowed to make any contact with the players or step within inside the boundaries of the court. Otherwise, he can be penalized for that. Okay, uh, and then scoring, which is usually important in all that sport codes that you'll be doing um, at UNM until you're done studying. Okay, so this is always an important one and is always a hot topic. Well, not hot topic, but an easy mark question for you guys to answer. Okay, so obviously the team that scores the most number of points would win the game. Um, and then field goals score 2 points, 3 points if the ball is released from the 3-point area. Okay, so in general, for every hoop that is made, it will be counted as 2 points that will go on your, obviously on your score. And then if you score behind the 3-point line, which is the half arc or the half circle, around the hoops, then you will be awarded with 3 points. So the position of the shooter is determined by where the shooter last touched the court before releasing the ball. Okay, so the aim is to be behind the line. Okay, so if you step onto the line, once the shot is made or when you release the ball, there's contact with the line, then it won't be considered as a 3-point. Then you'll only receive your 2 points. And then free throws may be awarded to a player resulting from a foul committed by the opposing team. Each successful free throw scores only 1 point. If a team accidentally scores in the wrong basket, then the points are awarded to the captain of the opposing team. If a team deliberately scores in the wrong basket, no points are awarded, and a violation is scored with possession going to the opposite team. Okay, then the act of shooting. This begins when a player is holding the ball and the shooting motion, usually upwards, has started. Okay, so from the moment that you pull back your arms When we look at when we go into the practicals in the last 2 weeks, and obviously we're going to look at the shooting and the technique with that. Please make sure that your microphone is switched off. Where's your space now? Okay. Okay, this may include arm or body movements in a shot attempt, the number of legal steps a player can take before shooting. Remember, when passing a ball and when shooting a ball, you're allowed more steps than usual. Like I've said in I think in the first lesson that we had, with every bounce of a basketball while you're dribbling, you are required to take 1.5, not more than 1.5 steps for each bounce. Okay, the only time that you're allowed to take more steps is when you're about to pass to someone or when you're about to shoot for a point or for points. That is the only time that you're allowed to take more steps. This takes does not affect whether player is in the act of shooting. It must be on one continuous motion. Okay. Oh yeah, that's the important thing. When you do that, it needs to be a continuous motion. So you're not allowed to take a step, take your time while doing those steps. Otherwise, it will be considered as a violation. So it needs to be a continuous motion while you're taking your 2 steps, and then you need to shoot or pass the basketball. Okay, and then ends when the ball has left the shooter's hand. And in the case of the shooter being off the ground until both feet have returned to the floor. Okay, so anything in basketball is valid, um, is valid or considered as a live ball if something is in the air. So whether a foul is committed, even if when a foul is committed, but you are still in possession of the ball and continuing with the motion, it will be required. It will be accepted if you take a shot, and then afterwards you will also be awarded with a foul. Okay, so you might get a free throw, or you might get a point build up, which we'll get to a bit later. Okay, and then charged timeouts. Each team is permitted 2 timeouts in the first half, and then 3 in the second half, with 1 each for each overtime period. The timeouts are not restricted to any particular quarter. The length of a timeout is usually 1 minute, and then the scorer shall sound his signal after 50 seconds so referees can get the teams ready to play once the full minute has elapsed. The full minute for timeouts must be taken. Okay, so a timeout is something that usually a coach can call at any time point in the game. So even during after a ball has gone out of bound, then a coach is maybe allowed to, if they want to talk strategy or he wants to quickly change something, give advice, he's allowed to literally put his one hand onto the points of his fingers, representing a T, and then a timeout is called, and then both teams will leave the court, and then they have 1 minute to strategize or to convey a message. So like they said, you allowed 2 timeouts in the first half, which means those 2 timeouts can be taken in any quarter. So when we say first half in a basketball, that one half that we are referring to has 2 quarters, and then obviously the second half also has 2 quarters. If there's by any chance the 2 teams have the same amount of points at the end of the match, then they go into overtime. Okay, it's pretty much extra time, and then within that time periods, each team is also awarded with an additional timeout that they can take during any time. Okay. A timeout is to be requested by the coach or the assistant coach by approaching the score table and making the request. The scorer signals to the referees at the next opportunity. A timeout can be granted after any whistle or if the opposing team scores, provided the request was made before the player throwing the ball in has the ball. Okay. Oops. Again, the substitutions are requested by the substitute, not the coach, by going to the score table and making the request to the scorers. The substitute must be dressed and ready to play at that time. Okay, so every time you want to make a substitution, you need to approach the scoring table. Once we get into the match officials, then we'll talk a bit more on the score about the scoring people sitting at the scoring table. But at any time any substitutes needs to be made, then the scoring table will be approached for this to be done. Substitutions are permitted for either team on any whistle by the referee. In the case of an injured player, if the player cannot continue playing immediately, you're allowed about 15 to 20 seconds, or that player receives treatment, the player must be substituted or a timeout charged. A timeout should be charged. Any time left for that timeout may be taken by the coaches to address the team. This now includes after successful 3 free throws, or if a throw-in is to occur after the free throws for either team. Okay, moving on to jump ball. Jump balls is one of the things that we already covered. I think by now you should know what that is. However, I'll quickly go over it again. Jump balls are called for any of the following, and the alternating position rule will apply. So when there's a held ball, so when there's a fight between two opposing players, then a jump ball is usually called. And then simultaneously or out of bounds, when the match officials can't determine who made contact with the ball last before it went out of bounds, then it will be determined by a jump ball again. And then both teams violate a missed last free throw. Okay, so like we said, later on we'll get to the free throws. There's a lot of rules surrounding the free throws and what the defending team is allowed to do and the attacking team is allowed to do. So when violations have been committed by both teams at a free throw, then it will usually also be determined by a jump ball. Okay, and then the ball lodges between the backboard and the ring, which happens not a lot, but it does happen sometime. And then the game is stopped when neither team has control nor is entitled to the ball. Okay, so that is when jump balls take place. And then also the one that's not mentioned here is obviously when you start, every time you start a quarter, then basically the game will be started by making use of the jump ball. Okay, so during at the start of the game, the jumpers occupy the half of the circle with 1 foot close to the center line. Non-jumpers are entitled to alternating positions around the circle or any other positions on the court. They do not have to stand still. The non-jumpers cannot enter the circle until the ball is legally tapped, like we mentioned last time. Okay, and then they're not allowed to tap it until it's reached its highest point. Touch the court, the court on or over the center line until the ball has been legally tapped. Tap the ball more than twice. And leave the circle until the ball has been tapped. Catch the ball until the ball has been legally tapped and has touched a non-jumping player or the floor or the referee. Okay, so I think there was a question even in the last class about that. Are you allowed to catch the ball? For jump balls, it's all about tapping. Okay, so it's getting to the ball first and then tapping it towards obviously your teammates. If any of the above events happen, then it's considered as a violation and the opposing team will get possession of the ball. If the ball is not tossed straight or the ball touches the floor without being tapped or both teams violate the jump, it shall be retaken. If a held ball occurs immediately after the tap, with neither team getting clear possession, then another jump ball will be taken. The two players holding the ball will then be the jumpers, the new jumpers. Okay, and then free throws. So just all the rules surrounding the free thrower or the shooter takes a position behind the free throw line, which is under the small semicircle, and then does not fake the shot. So you're not allowed to fake a shot to throw your defenders off or the defenders off. And then shoots the ball within 5 seconds. Okay, must make the ball hit the ring or enter the basket, does not touch the free throw line or the restricted area until the ball hits the ring. Okay, so you need to make sure that you do all of those things. Take the shot within 5 seconds is very important, and then contact with the ball or the ball with the ring or the backboard. Only then the shooter is allowed to actually move into the what we call a key. Okay. So this that you see here. So obviously, I don't know if you guys can see my cursor. So that will be a hoop. And then here where A6 is, that is pretty much who your shooter will be for the free throw. And that takes place at the back of this line within the semicircle. Okay. And then usually what you will have is you will have 3 players standing on the one side of the key, and then usually 2 to 3 players on the other side of the key. These positions on the sides are determined by the match official, by the referee. Okay, so what? Yeah. So obviously, there will always be more, or most of the time, there will always be more defensive players than attacking players. As you can see here, the B6, B4, and B5, those are all defensive players. And then you have 2 attacking players, which is A4 and A5. And then obviously the shooter will make up for the third. Okay, the third player within this area when a free throw is made. Okay, maximum of 5 players may occupy space along the lanes. A4 and A5 are from the shooter's team. And then obviously the B digits are from the defensive teams. Any unoccupied spaces must remain vacant. The referee may ask the players if they want to occupy the spaces. Cannot enter the restricted area until the ball has left the shooter's hands. Opponents should not distract the shooter by waving hands or making any noises. Okay, so they are literally not allowed to do anything until the shooter releases the ball out of his or her hands. Okay, and then other players may occupy any other position on the court behind the free throw. Yes.
Sir,
Yes.
during a free throw, is the shooter allowed to bounce the ball or just shoot?
Yeah, the shooter is allowed to bounce the ball. If that's what he wants to do, like to play, you see that a lot with shooters behind the free throw line. Okay, but remember what we said just I think a few slides ago, where we spoke about shooting, the act of shooting. Okay, so the act of shooting is considered when your arms are lifted. When we do practicals, we look at the shoot. So that's it's actually a good question that you're asking, because I said when the shooter releases the ball, so in the act of bouncing a ball, that's actually also releasing the ball. Okay, so I don't know if you were asking, is he allowed to do that, and when he does that, are the other players allowed to try and get the ball from him? Okay, it needs to be within the act of shooting, which means his arms need to be raised, his elbows needs to basically flex, and then at the point where your arms start moving forward and upwards, that is when a shot is in play. Okay, so that's why shooters aren't also allowed to make fake shots. You know, like in soccer, they, what do you call it? They do a dummy shot, like a fake shot, to try and trick you. Basketball, you're not allowed to do that. So as soon as that movement happens, then the shot is in play. So you're not allowed to pull out of it. Okay, except for if it's
Okay.
during a normal game. But you are allowed to bounce the ball, because bouncing the ball, your arms is not facing upwards, it's not going forwards, it's going to the bottom. So you're allowed to bounce the ball in preparation to take a shot. Okay.
Okay, sir, thank you.
Okay. Okay, where was I? Other players may occupy any other position on the court behind the free throw line extended and outside the 3-point line until the ball hits the ring. Okay, so other than the players that are already on the edges of the key, the rest of the players will be outside the the 3-point line, and only after contact with the hoop or the backboard will they be required or allowed to actually enter that area. Okay, and then free throw violations during the last or only free throw. If the ball is missed, violation by the shooter or teammate would be considered when opponent's ball, opponent's ball from out of bounds. Wait, I didn't read that properly. Violations by the shooter or teammate, opponent's ball from out of bounds. Okay, so when the shooter throws the ball and it goes out of bounds before anyone else has also touched the ball. Okay, and then violation by an opponent of the free throw shooter. Substitute free throw. I don't know that part. Why is these things confusing me now? It's because I haven't seen these slides in a while. Okay, so that's pretty much violation that can occur when a free throw is missed. So the ball can either go out of bounds, and then when these violations occur, then a substitute free throw can be awarded. Yes, that makes more sense. Okay, so usually during a match, before I continue, during a match, depending on the type of foul or violation that was broken, there can be a build up of free throws, which you don't get directly after the incident happens, but you get it after each quarter or halftime, after the first half or at the end of the match. Okay, so we'll get to how that scoring works, but then for other fouls, you can get immediate free throws whereby you only get one throw. Okay, so when these violations in a missed shot takes place, then only the shooter will get another opportunity to take another shot. I hope that makes sense. Okay, and then violation by both teams at the same time, then a jump ball and the alternating position rule applies. So then they fall back onto a jump ball. I think that we've already mentioned. If the shot is successful, there's a violation by the shooter, no score, and it is the opposition's ball from the sideline. Okay, so the free throw line is extended. So if a shot has been taken, but a violation occurred during this process, so even if the ball goes in, then the ball can also be awarded to the defending team in a case of a violation. And then a violation by the shooter's team or the opposition, they counter point and then they ignore the violation. Violation by shooter's teammates or the opposition. Okay, so it's maybe when there's violations because the advantage was given to the attacking team, and then they were awarded with a penalty or a free throw, and then violations occurred during the free throw by both teams. It will usually be restarted by a jump ball, or the referee has a decision also just to, because it was a penalty at start for the one team, they will just continue giving them the point and then continue with the match. Okay. Then free throw violations, sorry, during a free throw that is to be followed by another free throw. So when it's successful violation by the scorer, score will be cancelled and complete the rest of the free throw. Violation by a teammate or the opposition, counterpoint and ignore the violation. if that happens. Okay, before I continue, so you'll see there's a lot of, I don't know, basketball has a lot of technical rules that a lot of us don't think about. But don't be scared by all of these rules. It's quite easy once you actually go look at videos. I haven't posted I don't know, did I post? I think I posted videos on the Moodle. I'm not sure, but I'll go make sure. Otherwise, I'll bring in more of these videos so that you can actually see it. Once you see it, it'll be easier to remember as well. Okay, then just general terminologies used within a basketball game. I think that's pretty simple and straightforward. A fumble is when a player accidentally loses control of the ball. The player can legally recover the ball. So it's not like in rugby. If you fumble a ball in rugby, possession of the ball will be given to the your opposing team or the whatever. And then a pivot is the movement of one foot while the other foot remains at its point of contact with the floor. Okay, so pivoting is something that you also see in netball. So if you have, once you have the ball in hand, you're not allowed to run with the ball. So that movement that netball players make, where they step around one foot circulating, that is what we call a pivot, and it's also used in basketball. However, in basketball, you can move with the ball while bouncing it, but as soon as you stop your movement, it is required for you to hold the ball and then pivot and then pass the ball or shoot for the hoop before you're allowed to continue. Okay. And then dribble is made when a player in control of the ball bounces, throws, taps, or rolls the ball and touches it again before it touches another player. During a dribble, the ball must contact the floor between touches. The dribble ends when the ball comes to rest in one or both hands. Okay, so the movement that you make while in possession of a basketball, only the movement part that is considered as dribbling. Okay, so like I said last time, with a lot of sports, dribbling is not involved in a lot of sports. Only sports that really focus on dribbling is sports like basketball, hockey, and what was other soccer, rugby, and netball. There's not really dribbling involved because it's more moving into space, trying to receive. So it's just running, catching, and throwing. Whereas basketball, you literally need to control and you can move the ball into different directions. So the dribbling part is from the moment you get the ball and you start bouncing it to the moment you stop bouncing it. Okay. Because after that, a dribble ends because then you either need to shoot or you need to pass the ball away. So that is the definition, and quite, I think, quite easy marks if you get a question like that. Okay. So the following are not dribbles. The player fumbles the ball at the beginning or end of a dribble. Successive shots for goal, regardless of whether the ball hits the ring or the backboard or not, and then attempts to gain control of the ball by tapping the ball away from another player. Okay, so any movement, technically any movement that takes place when you don't have the ball or you're not in possession of the ball, that would be considered as not dribbling. So defending a player that has the ball is also not considered dribbling because you are obviously defending. Okay, team control starts when a player from either team is holding or dribbling the ball. This included passing the ball between teammates, and if the ball spills loose due to defensive pressure, it does not end until the ball leaves the hand on a shot. A player from the opposing team is either holding or dribbling the ball. Okay. Then this principle is important as the 3-second backcourt and shot clock rules all involve this concept. Okay, so when there's a live ball, what in basketball especially, what you do with that ball and the clock is very important. So that's why you'll see basketball players in a basketball match, they always look so in a hurry. Okay, it's because they need to get the ball played forward into the attacking sides part of the court in order to score before a timer is a certain time runs out. They need to pass, play a ball, get a ball into play before 5 seconds. They are only allowed 3 seconds. So there's a lot of time aspects related to the game. And this is all just to speed up the game, to make it more exciting for not just the players, but also for spectators. There was a hand raised, I think, from something, Robert.
Yes, sir, I got a question just a little bit before we move on.
Okay.
Now, as a player, am I allowed to dribble with both hands?
No, no, no. At the same time, it depends. As a player, when you dribble the ball, you're only allowed to bounce with one hand. But you can, the only time you're allowed to use both sides or both hands is if you're bouncing side to side. So if you bounce the ball, you release the ball with your right hand onto the floor, it bounces off the floor, and you receive it with your left hand, and then you immediately bounce it back onto the floor and it goes to your right. That's the only time you're allowed to use both hands in the dribbling process, but you're never allowed to use both hands simultaneously in contact with the ball, bouncing it onto the ground. That would be considered as double dribble, and that's a violation. So then you lose possession of the ball. However, as teachers, and you are teaching maybe players that don't have the specific skills, then obviously that would be your fundamental or your starting point for teaching someone or even a young person how to bounce a ball. You start with two hands and then you slowly progress to one hand, to the other hand, and then using both hands, bouncing the ball side to side. But in an official match, you are not allowed to bounce, make contact with the ball with both hands while bouncing. Okay. We've got 2 minutes left. Anyways, alley hoop. I'm sure you've heard of the alley hoop in basketball, an offensive play in which one player throws the ball near the basket to a teammate who jumps, catches the ball in midair, and puts it in the hoop before touching the ground. Okay, so this is also like a simultaneous type of movement from two players. So a player might try and shoot the ball, knowing that he's got a teammate that is on his way in. So he won't shoot for to get the ball into the basket. He'll just shoot the ball close to the basket. The other team will jump while they are airborne and the ball is airborne. He will catch the ball in the air and then throw it into the basket. And that is what we call an alley hoop. Okay. And then usually after when an alley oop takes place, usually it's finished off with a slam dunk. So in basketball, that's just a fancy way of scoring a point, is where they dunk the ball and they actually hang on the rim of the hoop. So the alley hoop combines elements of teamwork, pinpoint passing, timing, and then finishing. So it's something that you can also try to during your training. Anyways, okay, we've got less than a minute left, so I think we will stop there for today. If there's any questions, you can just ask on the group.